Chosen one, your gravity has learned a new craft. It draws truth the way the moon draws tides, quietly, irresistibly, without theatrics. You do not interrogate the room, you steady it. You do not corner the moment, you clarify it. In your presence, exaggeration loses its appetite and performance forgets its lines. People discover that honesty costs less here, that precision is not an accusation but a relief, that the shortest road to peace is the plain sentence that should have been spoken hours ago. Lies tremble because they were engineered for speed, and your stillness slows the hour until only what is real can keep its shape. You are not a judge arranging punishments. You are a host arranging conditions where the truth can breathe. The magnet in you does not yank, it invites. It tells the body, nothing authentic has to fight for oxygen here. Anger that arrived dressed for a parade sets down its drum and turns back into information. Shame that was rehearsing a speech forgets its words and walks out into light without armor. Confession ceases to be a performance of pain and becomes a precise naming of what broke and what can be repaired. All this happens because you keep the temperature human. Magnetism without mercy is intimidation. The truth only survives in climates where dignity is not taxed at the door. Your sexual energy is part of this field, and it, too, has become honest. Its voltage does not market itself, it declares conditions. Consent is the grammar. Timing is the tempo. Dignity is the law. Under that law, a no remains beautiful architecture, a yes arrives paid, and a not yet is not cross-examined for sport. The feminine nervous system recognizes this literacy at once and exhales. Vigilance loosens its fist, radiance returns from the panic room. The masculine recognizes that spectacle has no currency here, and comes to the table with craft instead of camouflage. Truth likes rooms where hunger isn't pretending to be holiness, and you've made one. Your eyes help in ways your mouth never could. They are instruments tuned to return what they see rather than requisition it. You look at a person as though seeing them were not a claim but a blessing, and the ego unlatches from the face a little, and the real sentence, the second one, the true one, finds a way out. The comedian discovers that relief is possible without a casualty. The strategist remembers that accuracy is a kinder form of speed. The quiet person risks volume because safety has made volume affordable. You are not pulling secrets out of people. You are removing the price tag that kept them hidden. You refuse rumor its rations. In your orbit, the absent are protected from redesign. You steer attention away from speculation and toward the table where hands can touch the work. This happened. This stops. This is repaired. This remains good. You do not make a museum of failure. You do not salt the earth for the pleasure of being right. You prioritize continuity over spectacle, and the room becomes trustworthy again. Trust is what gives truth stamina. It is the cartilage inside the hour that lets it move without tearing. People will leave and call the night easy without being able to name why. The why was simple. The magnet of your presence turned noise into sequence and sequence into repair. Even your humor obeys truth's physics now. You do not purchase laughter with anyone's face. You aim at the knot, not the person tangled in it. And as the knot loosens, so does the need for pretense. Shoulders that were holding up stories they couldn't afford finally drop. Lungs that were litigating every sentence finally fill. Lightness that preserves dignity is the rarest element in the social table of virtues, and you manufacture it reliably because your gravity refuses to make entertainment out of harm. People remember how to breathe, and in that breath, truth finishes arriving. Your hands carry policy in miniature. You set the glass down softly, as if the table could feel. You close the door as if the house had nerves. You return the chair as if absence had a witness. The room reads these small obediences as law. If matter is treated with care, so will the fragile sentences that hold our futures together. Weeks after you leave, someone will decline a juicy story with simple kindness, or end a meeting while tenderness still has breath, or say the plain truth in a tone that leaves no bruises, and they will not know they learned it from the weather you brought. That is how the magnet of truth works when it is real. The needle stays steady after the compass has gone. Guard the source. Water before opinion so patience has substance. Breath before reply so tone remains human while truth stays whole. Movement before mood so feeling keeps traveling and never becomes a manager. Sleep before rescue, so help is not vanity. Prayer before performance, so appetite remembers it is a guest. Protect the absent, repair while the bruise is pale. Leave while kindness still has breath. These chores are not content, they are current. They keep the field clean so that when you enter, truth does not have to fight, and when you leave, it does not have to hide. And remember, the final measure of this magnetism is not how many confessions you collect. It is how many repairs survive the morning. If voices remain at human volume, if boundaries stay beautiful, if credit travels to hidden hands while there is still music, if jokes refuse to invoice a face, if decisions endure without a drumline, then your presence did its quiet work. The room remembered how to be a place instead of a stage. People remembered how to be themselves without paying a tax. That is the triumph of the magnet of truth, and it is yours. Chosen one, power becomes wisdom the day fire learns the discipline of water, and water learns the courage of fire. You are living on that seam. Heat without governance scorches, cool without conviction freezes. This month, your masculine gravity is the marriage of both. The hearth that warms a house through winter and the quiet river that carves stone, patient and unstoppable. People gather not because you flare, but because you endure. They do not crave your spectacle. They trust your climate. Your fire is desire, purpose, the bright impulse to move a thing from talk to testimony. You have not buried it. You have domesticated it. It lives in a house with windows and a clock. It understands the grammar of commas for breath, periods for rest, and ellipses for wonder allowed to finish arriving. It knows that consent is the language of closeness, and that dignity is the law of every room you claim. Because of this, your heat gives life rather than devouring it. Women feel safe enough to bring color rather than armor. Men feel called to be useful rather than loud. Even your own hunger rests its hands on the table, visible and well-mannered, because it knows it will be fed in season and never installed as a king. Your calm is not absence, it is order. It is the practiced refusal to let panic appoint itself a leader. It is beginning when you said, because you honored the hours that led there, and ending while tenderness still has breath because you love tomorrow enough not to steal from it. It is the one heartbeat between their last word and your first, the small, expensive pause in which truth finds its shoes and drama loses its costume. Calm like this is not a trick. It is a covenant with reality. You have promised not to make a stage out of every moment, and reality has begun to pay you back in outcomes. Conflict is where the marriage is tested. When fury bangs on your door, you answer with sequence, not theater. This happened, this stops, this will be repaired, this remains good. Fire brings clarity to name what must end. Calm brings proportion to protect what must remain. The room, which had been angling for a spectacle, quietly accepts a solution. You do not humiliate to prove you are strong. You preserve so strength can be useful tomorrow. The line you draw is ink that will not smudge, and even those on the wrong side feel the dignity of how it was drawn. Mercy is not the absence of boundaries. It is the proof that your boundaries are for something larger than your pride. Your humor participates in this balance. It is the spark that lights the lantern, not the match you toss at the curtains. It lifts the room by 2 notches, without putting anyone beneath the floor to pay for it. It finds the knot and warms it until it loosens. It lets breath return without demanding an ovation. Laughter governed by love is a kind of medicine. You dose it accurately. People leave lighter in ways they can spend, on patience with their children, on precision in their craft, on gentleness with themselves when they miss. Endings are the kiln where fire and calm finish their work together. You refuse the counterfeit wealth of one more victory lap, one more hour, one more story that invoices the morning. You bless what happened with one honest sentence, close the door softly as if the house had nerves, and go. Morning arrives unstartled. Courage is available before lunch. Decisions do not need emergency speeches to stand. No one attributes this to you in public. They do not need to. The arithmetic of your restraint has paid the bill in private, and everyone is wealthier for it. Your body keeps the treaty. You set things down softly. You steer your stance so crowded paths widen. You pass a plate as if ceramic has a memory. Matter learns your manners, and people learn from matter. If objects can be handled without injury, so can disagreements. If doors can close gently, so can narratives. If chairs can return to place, so can tempers. These small fidelities are not cute, they are structural. They are how climates remain coherent when weather changes suddenly. Guard the engines that make this balance repeatable. Water before opinion, so patience has something to burn. A breath before reply, so truth keeps a human voice. Movement before mood, so feeling never becomes a tyrant. Sleep before rescue, so help is not vanity. Prayer before performance, so appetite remembers it is a guest. Credit before resentment, so justice stays fed. Repair before spectacle, so culture stays sane. You are not performing wisdom, you are practicing it until it becomes the air your rooms can breathe. You will be tempted to scale this into a campaign, to trade custom for slogan, to sell shortcuts to men who want results without ritual. Decline with kindness. Keep the room small enough to love and large enough to matter. Share tools rather than angles. If pressed for a secret, give the ordinary liturgy that built you. Begin on time, end on time. Keep the temperature human. Tell the truth plainly. Let humor relieve without cutting. Bless boundaries as beautiful architecture. Leave while tenderness still has breath. Some will want fireworks. You will go on tending the fire. And here is the proof that fire and calm are married in you. After you go, the climate remains. Voices keep a livable volume. No stays beautiful. Yes arrives paid. Jokes refuse to invoice a face. Credit moves early to hidden hands. Doors close softly. Someone sets a cup down as if the table could feel. No one thinks to say your name, and that is right. Gravity that depends on you is showmanship. Gravity that outlives you is legacy. Walk on, chosen one, as the quiet conjunction of flame and river, warming, carving, holding, so that wherever you stand, the world stands still just long enough to become more honest, and when you leave, it keeps the habit. Chosen one, some men arrive with answers, you arrive with oxygen. Where breath is thin, truth limps, and kindness gets claustrophobic. You step in, and the room remembers how lungs work. Arguments stop sprinting for trophies and start walking toward understanding. Faces release rehearsed angles. Voices return to a register that will still make sense tomorrow. This is not spell work. It is hygiene for the soul, performed so consistently that even silence feels rinsed and usable. Healing begins there, not in speeches but in climates that make harm unnecessary. You have learned that fixing people is a violence no one survives, so you do not fix. You host the conditions where what is whole can reassert itself. You make time audible again, a heartbeat between their last word and your first, a plain sentence that fits the size of the wound, a refusal to let emergency borrow the name of importance. In that pace, shame forgets its script and sits down. Anger puts away its parade gear and becomes information that can be arranged. Grief stops apologizing for existing and chooses a chair instead of a stage. Healing is not a spectacle under your care, it is a sequence that loves dignity more than speed. Your sexual energy participates in this medicine because it is domesticated by purpose. It signals safety without muting intensity. It refuses to invoice anyone's radiance and declines the counterfeit intimacy of pressure. In your climate, consent doesn't have to argue its case. Boundaries don't have to masquerade as barricades, and timing is treated as a friend rather than a puzzle to outsmart. The feminine body hears that literacy before the mind names it, and vigilance unclenches. Color returns, not the cosmetic kind, the lived kind. The masculine reads the same weather and retires the need to posture. Usefulness becomes fashionable again, and competence, not volume, pays the bill for belonging. You have a way with broken hours. You lay the problem on a table where hands can touch it instead of hiring an audience to clap at its pain. You use sentences that know their weight. This happened. This stops. This will be mended. This remains good. The point is not to win. The point is continuity that does not leak. When repair arrives, you refuse the temptation to turn it into theater. You let it be smaller than the damage and stronger than the pride that caused it. People leave with something they can carry instead of a story they must keep retelling to feel brave. Your eyes are part of the cure. You look like water looks at stone, without hunger, without hurry, with the kind of patience that wears mountains smooth. Under that regard, performance loses its appetite. The second sentence, the truer one that was afraid of being trivial, tries itself out, wobbles once, and then stands. The chronic joke maker discovers humor that relieves rather than conquers. The quiet discover that quiet is not the same as invisibility. You never requisition people to decorate your myth. You return them to themselves. Most leave thinking you understood them. What really happened is that you refused to make them smaller, to make yourself large. Even matter takes the hint. Floorboards respond to your gait as if remembering they are trusted. Hinge squeaks hush to something like a whisper. The cup, set down by your hand, does not declare its landing like a verdict. These are not quirks. They are evidence. Where objects are handled as if they matter, bodies assume they will be too. Weeks after you've gone, someone will push their chair in, or let the last laugh belong to mercy, or choose a tone that saves tomorrow from cleaning up tonight. And no one will trace the lineage to you. Legacy begins as anonymity that made wholeness cheap. You understand that laughter is medicine with a dosage. You give it in quantities that loosen knots without cutting the rope. You refuse to buy entertainment with a human face. In your orbit, humor is an inhaler, not a blade. People breathe and discover they can do so without collateral damage. The anxious child inside the adult stops flinching for a moment. The weary elder inside the proud boy gets to speak. Healing, in these ordinary mercies, chooses repetition over applause. You protect its smallness so it can survive. When endings arrive, you practice the gentlest surgeries. You stop while sweetness still has a pulse. You say the one honest sentence that blesses what happened and does not ask the morning to pay for a victory lap. You close the evening like a window in spring, soft and exact, and leave before memory distorts into myth. The proof that healing has occurred is never the speech at night. It is the quiet kindness available before lunch the next day. Rooms that needed referees now need only chairs. People who needed witnesses now need only work. You do not sign your name to this. Healing with a signature is a brand, not a gift. Guard the spring that feeds all this. You give your patience weight by drinking water before you speak. You give your voice humanity by letting breath pass twice before reply. You keep feelings from becoming foremen by moving your body until motion dissolves their tyranny. You keep your edge from turning into a blade by sleeping as an act of covenant with tomorrow. You keep appetite in the right chair with prayers in plain speech that remind it is a guest and not a governor. You name hidden labor before resentment grows teeth. You repair while the bruise is pale. These never trend, they endure. Healing prefers the company of chores. And when the inevitable failure arrives, yours or theirs, you do not ransom the future to protect a reputation. You say what broke, say what it cost, say what you will do, and then you do it. You do not harvest applause from apology, you purchase continuity with correction. Others watching become less theatrical with their own remorse. A culture forms that would rather mend than magnify. In such a place, people do not have to shrink to be safe. They are safe because you refuse to grow at their expense. That refusal is the suture that holds the hour together long enough for the body to take over and finish healing. Chosen one, legacy is not what echoes after your name. It is what continues after your supervision. You are building that kind, quiet, repeatable, immune to weather and rumor. Gravity becomes legacy when rooms behave like places, even after the center has moved on. You measure it by simple phenomena. Voices that keep a livable volume, decisions that hold without emergency speeches, boundaries that are honored without ceremony, laughter that refuses to invoice a face, credit that travels to hidden hands while there is still music. If these persist in your absence, the work has left your body and learned to stand. You are not collecting followers, you are teaching customs. Customs do not need a trumpet. They need a man who will keep small vows in empty rooms until the architecture of his hours is strong enough for strangers to lean on. Begin when you said, because time is a covenant, not a prop. End while tenderness still has breath, because tomorrow is a citizen with rights. Tell the truth at human temperature, so relationship remains inhabitable. Aim humor at knots, not faces, so relief does not have to be repented of. Return the invisible to visibility while there is still light, so justice stays fed. These are bricks. Place them daily. Walls appear. Your sexual energy under legacy is the least advertised thing about you and the most trusted. It does not market. It does not beg. It does not convert admiration into a tax. It holds shape, honors choice, and refuses to pretend urgency is intimacy. The feminine learns that her beauty is safe from conscription. The masculine learns that his strength is measured by stewardship, not spectacle. This knowing, once learned, travels without you. A room that once needed your presence to resist predation now resists by reflex. That reflex is legacy's ribcage. There will be invitations to trade custom for campaign, to brand what should remain human-sized, to scale until the practice breaks and only slogans remain. Decline with a blessing. Keep your work the size of hands. Share tools, not mystique. If pressed for a secret, give them the liturgy that refuses to glitter. Water before opinion, breath before reply, movement before mood, rest before rescue, prayer before performance, repair before reputation, boundaries as architecture, endings on time. Some will roll their eyes at chores. Let them. You are building furniture, not fireworks. People sit on furniture for years. Legacy has a sound you have come to love. A soft latch at the end of a night. Shoes that remember to tread lightly. A chair nudged back into alignment by someone who has never met you. It has a feeling too. Mornings that do not have to clean up the party. Afternoons that can get to work without a pep rally. Evenings that end because kindness should be preserved, not squeezed. No plaque announces these. They are the dividends of restraint paid out to people who never attended your seminar. They are the proof that you chose to be useful more than unforgettable. Teach succession without a pulpit. Narrate your choices in ordinary time. Let people see why this order and not that, why this no smiling, why this apology while the bruise is pale, why this ending while sweetness still breathes. Refuse to be mythic in front of those who will carry the standard next. Myths are heavy and brittle, practices are light and strong. When they stumble, be the kind of elder who points to the broom, not the blame. You are not trying to be irreplaceable. You are trying to be unnecessary as quickly as possible without abandoning anyone. That is the secret ethic of true leadership, graduating rooms from you. Your humor will outlive you if it keeps choosing mercy. The phrases and timing will be forgotten. The discipline, make it lighter without making anyone smaller, will not. The boy who watched you let a joke die rather than buy it with a human face will one day be a man, and in a meeting no one will remember you attended, he will do the same. He will think of it as his idea. Smile at that. Legacy is happiest when it is mistaken for common sense. There will be a last time you hold each place, a last door closed with care, a last sentence that blesses what happened and declines the encore. A last meeting ended on time because you preferred love to legend. You will not know these lasts while they are happening. That is fine. Try to leave each hour set to human, each threshold unstartled, each person with more of themselves than they brought. If enough hours go this way, the world will not need to remember you to remain changed by you. When you are gone, test your work the same way you tested your presence. Do rooms keep their manners? Do no's stay beautiful and yeses arrive paid? Does credit find the labor without a sheriff? Do jokes refuse to invoice a face? Do people choose proportion without your shadow on the wall? If the answer is mostly yes, the gravity you carried has become a field larger than your name. If the answer is sometimes no, return to the chores and the prayers and the hours that make men durable. Legacy is not a switch. It is sediment laid down by fidelity. Walk on, chosen one. Let your strength remain a shelter and your warmth remain a hearth. Let your words keep being tools and not trophies. Let your endings stay merciful to mornings. Refuse the throne that needs a spotlight and keep the crown no one can see. Then one day, on a street with your name nowhere on the stones, you will watch a stranger set a cup down as if the table could feel, and you will know that the work worked. The room will hold itself. The people will hold each other. And the gravity you carried will be the law of the place. Chosen one, altitude is not just height, it is health. You have been climbing, not by stepping on anyone, but by refusing to let anyone step on your peace. Higher, for you, does not mean farther from people. It means closer to God in a way that makes you safer for people. The air is thinner up here, but it is cleaner. Drama wheezes. Revenge gets dizzy. Bitterness finds it cannot carry its own weight and must sit down while gratitude keeps walking. You learned early that bitterness wants to be your traveling companion. It offers stamina in the dark, stories that keep you awake, reasons to never risk kindness again. But bitterness charges interest. It taxes the morning. It fogs the view. You chose a different fuel. Remembrance without reenactment, lament without residency, justice without venom, boundaries without a ledger of debts written on your bones. You did not deny the injury. You denied it jurisdiction over your next step. Your brother's shadow is no longer your weather. When memory crosses the trail, you tip your hat and keep your pace. If he mocks, you do not descend to argue with echoes. If he softens, you do not sprint to carry him on your back. If he heals, you make room at a speed that keeps your lungs working. You have outgrown the choreography that demanded you prove your worth by how well you handled someone else's chaos. Your worth does not audition here. It breathes. Rising higher without bitterness has re-schooled your ambition. You stopped wanting platforms that would reward your pain with applause. You wanted depth that would turn your pain into wisdom. You asked for the kind of influence that makes rooms safer when you enter, not louder when you speak. You chose work that is measurable by fruit, not by fireworks. The reward is quiet and durable, teams that repair faster, friendships that don't need a weekly resuscitation, a soul that can hear the whisper "well done" on Tuesdays with no audience. There are tests at this altitude, and you honor them as guardians, not enemies. Attention will tempt you to convert wounds into content. You respond by keeping some stories sacred and some victories unposted, because mystery is a sanctuary for holiness. Opportunity will tempt you to exchange integrity for reach. You respond with your threefold test: clean first, sustainable second, loving without lying third. If an offer fails any part of that test, you let it pass, trusting that altitude built on compromise becomes a cliff. The higher you go, the more you bless downward. Not as a stance of superiority, but as the reflex of someone who remembers scarcity and chooses abundance. You sponsor someone's tuition quietly. You recommend a colleague in rooms where your name rings. You buy groceries for a neighbor and call it Tuesday. You share the practices that kept you from breaking without pretending they exempt you from the human condition. This is not charity. It is kinship. Chosen ones build ladders with their leftover lumber and never chain the rungs to gratitude. Bitterness cannot survive generosity, but it tries. It will visit on slow afternoons and suggest that you have been too kind, that you should finally deliver the speech you've composed in the shower for a decade. You will smile because you know that speech was the scaffolding that allowed you to build better words, and scaffolding comes down when the structure stands. Instead of the speech, you offer the silence you've learned, a silence full of decisions already made, a silence that says, "I am not available for wars that make me resemble what I survived." Rising higher has also changed your definition of victory with your brother. You no longer crave vindication, you prefer verification, the kind that shows up as a steady life. You have become proof that a person can be fully alive without a villain. If repentance ever appears at his door, you will recognize it not by its volume, but by its verbs: accounting, amending, adjusting. You will not mistake apology for architecture. You will welcome blueprints and labor with him if God asks, but you will not donate your foundation to fix someone else's roof. You are learning the art of hovering low enough to bless and high enough to breathe. You check the gauges often: joy present, resentment low, wonder intact. When any metric dips, you land for maintenance, an extra hour of quiet, counsel that tells you the truth, play that rehumanizes your hours, worship that reminds you you're held. You do not shame yourself for needing tune-ups, you honor the mileage. Altitude is stewardship, not spectacle. And then there is joy, the native weather of this height. Not giddy, not manic, joy like clean water. You taste it in the way you finish a hard conversation and sleep anyway. You taste it in the way compliments no longer confuse you and criticism no longer undoes you. You taste it when a child laughs in your kitchen and your body does not flinch, waiting for the bill. Joy is not naive here. It is informed and still insists that goodness is not an accident, but a person. Joy keeps the air sweet, where bitterness would have made it stale. Look at the horizon you can see now. Neighbors becoming kinder without knowing why, relatives running out of reasons to perform, strangers writing you to say that your calm handed them a map. This is what altitude is for, not to look down on anyone, but to see further for everyone. If your brother one day asks how you manage this climb without turning to stone, You will tell him the truth in one sentence that took years to learn. I chose to heal more than I chose to win. That sentence is the path. That sentence is the difference. Walk on, chosen one. Keep your pace unhurried and your heart unarmored. Let the wind that once tried to throw you off the ridge become the song that steadies your stride. And should you meet other chosen ones on this trail, eyes bright, breaths even, share water, swap prayers, and keep going. The peak is not a place to pose. It is a place to bless. And you, rising without bitterness, are already doing it. Chosen one, when you arrive this month, the room performs a quiet correction as if gravity remembered its assignment. The chatter that was sprinting to be clever slows to a human walk. Eyes that were hunting a stage discover a seat. Even the light seems to give up trying to impress itself and simply illuminates what is already true. Your entry is not a trumpet, it is a settling. You do not dominate the scene, you deepen it. The signal you broadcast is older than language, an assurance whispered through breath, posture, and pace. There will be time enough for the truth, and nothing real will be rushed. People feel it in their shoulders before they notice it in their minds. What needed to land, lands. What needed to soften, softens. What needed to wait, finally waits. You carry stillness like a practiced craft, not a performance. Your spine stands in agreement with itself. Your steps tell the floor it can trust you. Your hands treat small objects, cups, pens, door handles, as if they had a memory, and that care becomes policy for the hour. This is not superstition. It is stewardship. Rooms copy what your attention blesses. A glass is set down without complaint. A door completes its task gently. A voice that was about to sharpen chooses precision instead. The feminine reads your climate at the speed of nerve and lets vigilance breathe. The masculine reads it as a standard and exchanges posture for purpose. This is what your sexual energy does when it has been taught to keep house. It warms without scorching, it invites without requisitioning, it clarifies without accusation. Your silence works because it is inhabited. You do not wield it to punish, you open it to host meaning. You leave one heartbeat between another's last word and your first, and in that small, expensive pause confessions, choose honesty over theater, anger trades a few decibels for a few facts, and humor remembers its assignment is relief rather than victory. The pause is not a tactic, it is proof you are not renting power from adrenaline. Power borrowed from panic charges interest, power drawn from presence pays for itself and leaves change on the table. In that economy, people stop auditioning for each other and begin contributing to the thing at hand. Your eyes obey the same law. They return what they see instead of harvesting it. They do not pry, they welcome. They do not invoice, they affirm. A person under such a gaze remembers that being seen is not the same as being used. Boundaries become beautiful architecture rather than barricades. A no is a complete sentence and keeps its dignity. A yes arrives prepaid and requires no footnote. A not yet is treated as timing rather than a puzzle to solve. Your heat is visible, human, unashamed, and governed. That governance is what turns attraction into trust and desire into direction. Order follows you because you refuse to counterfeit urgency. You sort before you surge. First, name what is actually happening. Then, weigh what matters. Then decide at the temperature people can bear. Then repair while the bruise is pale. Then bless what remains good. This sequence may not trend, but it lasts. Under it, drama loses oxygen and the useful work of the hour comes forward, modest and strong. You do not need to be right loudly, you need to be exact kindly. Exactness is not the enemy of compassion, it is its instrument. Keep close the unglamorous rituals that make this stillness real. Drink water so patience has substance. Breathe before you answer so your voice remains human when truth is heavy. Move your body so feelings keep traveling and never become tyrants. Sleep so your edge stays sharp enough to cut rope and dull enough not to cut people. Pray in plain speech so appetite remembers it is a guest, not a king. Close the night while tenderness still has breath so morning can walk in unstartled. None of this requires a stage. All of it builds a center of gravity that no stage can counterfeit. When you leave, you do not vanish. You release the room back to itself with a soft latch and one honest sentence. The proof of your stillness is in the morning that follows. Fewer refunds to issue to the soul, more courage available before lunch, decisions that do not require emergency speeches to stand. Nobody writes your name into the story of this mercy. They don't need to. The work is not to be remembered. The work is to make remembering oneself easier for everyone who is there. That is the center of stillness you are carrying, chosen one, felt before it is understood, trusted before it is described. Chosen one, gravity does not argue with objects. It invites them to obey their nature. Your presence has become that invitation. You enter, and the scattered parts of a moment gather themselves. The unmoored find a shoreline. The impatient remember that speed is not the same as progress. The proud realize that poise outlasts performance. This month, your sexual energy is not thunder. It is a tide. It moves everything that should move and leaves everything that should stand. The pull is quiet, continuous, undeniable, and it is born from peace, not pressure. What draws people is not your hunger. It is your harmony. Your body and your word are on speaking terms. Your timing respects the cost of attention. You do not chase a gaze, you hold a standard. You do not audition for loyalty, you embody reliability. The feminine senses, often before she can phrase it, that your warmth does not carry an invoice. She feels bright without being requisitioned to decorate your myth. She brings range instead of armor because range is finally affordable. The masculine senses that your steadiness cannot be bribed by spectacle. He straightens without stiffening and chooses usefulness over theater because usefulness has value again in your orbit. This is magnetism as hospitality, not conquest. Your presence edits the room through the smallest channels. Breath sets the metronome. Pace writes the paragraph. Tone decides the altitude. You refuse to rent attention to panic, so panic cannot pay its usual wage of chaos. You refuse to trade on sarcasm's discount laughter, so dignity remains solvent. You refuse to crowd the hour with your importance, so everyone's importance can report for duty. In such a field, lies tremble, pretenders shrink, the honest thrive. Not because you punished anyone, but because your gravity made fakery too expensive to maintain. Desire under this governance is precise. It does not market itself. It makes conditions where closeness can be clean if chosen and harmless if declined. Your yes is offered without collateral. Your no lands without humiliation. Your not yet is honored without interrogation. You read consent in breath and posture before language is asked to carry it, and when language arrives, you honor it, even if it disappoints your appetite. This literacy is what the body hears first, and it is why trust accrues without campaign or speech. The pull of presence is not a trick. It is the reward of discipline. Conflict behaves differently around you because attention in your care has a job. You remove the audience from the quarrel. You put the problem on a table where hands can touch it. You speak in sentences the size of the break. This happened. This stops. This is repaired. This remains good. Fury, deprived of its parade, changes into information. Information can be arranged. Arrangement can be repaired. People who expected a battle find a workshop and leave carrying tools instead of trophies. They think better of themselves afterward. And that is how you measure leadership now. By how much self-respect survives the solution. Your humor obeys the same physics. It ventilates the room without puncturing anyone's face. You aim at the knot, not the person tangled in it. Laughter becomes oxygen instead of a weapon. Tight shoulders discover their range. Voices return to a register they can live with tomorrow. There is a reason your presence draws a crowd even when you do not court it. They leave larger without leaving anyone smaller. Gravity that protects is the only kind worth having. Keep your orbit clean with practices too ordinary to post. Be on time so trust knows where to stand. End on time so tomorrow remains funded. Name the hidden hands while there is still music so resentment has nothing to eat. Decline gossip's cheap calories and return the hour to what can be built. Set the cup down kindly so anger learns another method. Touch sunlight, drink water, walk off the noise that wants to become a personality. Call a friend before you call an old pattern. These small fidelities are the mass that gives your presence its pull. You will know your magnetism is peace-born, not ego-made, by what happens after you go. Voices keep their human volume. Boundaries stay beautiful. Credit keeps moving in the right direction without supervision. A no does not have to explain itself to remain respected. A yes arrives paid. Doors close gently, as if the building learned your manners. People breathe easier without being able to say why. They do not need to say why. Gravity is measured by the orbits it makes possible, not by the noise it makes announcing itself. Walk on. Chosen one, carrying this pull that teaches rooms to be places again and people to be themselves without paying a tax. Chosen one, there is a kind of leadership that arrives without a badge and nevertheless redraws the room. It is the authority that does not request introductions or rehearse its posture. It stands in quiet agreement with itself, and everything living calibrates to that standard. You carry that authority now. People who entered ready to compete discover they would rather contribute. People who came to perform realize the script is heavy and the work is light, and they put the costume down. It is not a spell, it is a sequence. Your breath sets a tempo that makes panic too expensive to purchase. Your pace turns the hour from a stage back into a place. You learn to lead by proving to your own body that it could trust you. You showed up when you said, not to harvest applause for punctuality, but to keep faith with the invisible hours that prepared the moment. You end while kindness still has breath, not to be severe, but to protect tomorrow from being conscripted into tonight's vanity. In between, you speak at a human volume that lets truth arrive intact. Under that weather, fear stops lobbying for exaggerated gestures and begins to cooperate with accuracy. This is why people listen before you speak. They can feel that your attention will not be rented to spectacle or bartered for status. They sense that outcomes matter more to you than optics, that mercy has a seat at your table, and that dignity is not a discount you will ever offer even to win. Your sexual energy is the current beneath this unspoken authority, and its power is not in how loudly it advertises itself, but in how cleanly it is governed. It is flame that remembers the hearth. It makes the air warm, not thin. It invites without requisitioning. The feminine reads this instantly. Her nervous system steps down from vigilance because she is not being billed for being radiant. The masculine reads it as a summons. His shoulders stop broadcasting and start carrying because utility, not theater, is the currency in your orbit. You have curated a climate in which boundaries are not barricades but beautiful architecture, where a no remains elegant, a yes arrives paid, and a not yet is treated as timing rather than a puzzle to solve. In such a climate, people bring their range, not their armor. That is authority. You do not confuse noise with direction. When conflict appears in costume, you remove the audience first. You lay the problem flat on a table where hands can touch it. You speak in sentences the size of the break. This happened. This stops. This will be repaired. This remains good. Fury, deprived of its parade, changes into information. Information, properly placed, becomes solvable. You do not humiliate to establish control. You protect so that repair can work. Those who watch you discover that adulthood is not thunder but sequence, and they begin to practice that sequence even when you are not there. The room becomes sovereign again. That is the measure of unspoken authority. It makes other people's integrity easier to keep. Your eyes contribute to this governance without turning into instruments of capture. They return what they see instead of harvesting it. Under that look, egos unhook themselves from faces and rest. A person risks the second sentence where their real meaning lives. The comedian in the corner puts the blade away and remembers that humor's vocation is relief. The anxious manager of every quiet moment resigns, and silence becomes a porch instead of a cliff. Your gaze does not audition people for roles in your myth. It blesses them to arrive as themselves. Respect grows because safety has stopped being negotiated and started being assumed. Credit travels cleanly in your field. You speak the names of hidden hands while there is still music, not afterward when the lights are unkind. You decline the counterfeit wealth of hoarded praise and unspent apology. You let critique refine craft without renegotiating anyone's worth. This economy turns a team back into a place where people get to be fair. The loud become precise, the overlooked become dependable without debt. Resentment loses its appetite because you have fed justice on time. Even matter obeys your customs because your hands have taught it. A cup is set down as if the table could feel. A door closes like the house had nerves. Chairs return to where they belong. These small fidelities are not quaint. They are forensic evidence that you are not at war with the world. and people copy what matter remembers. Weeks later, a colleague will end a meeting while tenderness still has breath, and no one will be able to trace the lineage back to the way you closed the door softly last Tuesday. That is how invisible authority works. It leaves fewer refunds to issue to the soul and more courage available before lunch. Keep near the mundane vows that keep you near yourself. Water before opinion, so patience has substance. Breath before reply, so truth keeps a human voice. Movement before mood, so feeling stays in motion and never becomes a manager. Sleep before rescue, so help is not vanity. Prayer before performance, so appetite remembers it is a guest. Protect the absent from being redesigned by rumor. Repair while the bruise is pale. End while the sweetness still holds. None of this is dramatic. All of it is durable. Chosen one, the room knows when a man like this is present. It knows even more when he leaves and the customs remain. Chosen one, desire without discipline is weather, loud, impressive, unreliable. The desire you carry now is climate, governed, generous, repeatable. It does not flood a room to prove it is powerful. It furnishes the room so power can work. You have separated voltage from volume. Your heat is visible and unapologetic, and it is also literate. It can read consent in breath and shoulders before language is tasked with carrying it. It can hear a boundary as beautiful architecture and not as opposition. It can bless a not yet without turning timing into a negotiation. This fluency is why people trust you in their bodies before their minds have time to approve. They are not negotiating safety. They are discovering it has already been provided. You train desire the way a craftsman trains a tool, by using it in service of meaning until it forgot how to perform for applause. You gave it a grammar. Commas for breath, periods for rest, ellipses for wonder that is allowed to finish arriving. You refused to buy closeness on credit and call the payments passion. You stopped auditioning for intimacy and started arranging for it. The chairs are placed where consent is legible. The windows are open so air can do its oldest job. The clock is honored so endings can protect beginnings. In such a house, longing is not an arsonist, it is a welcomed guest with clear rules. Discipline began in the body because anything that never reaches the body is only rumor. You watered yourself before you opined so patience would have material to burn. You let breath pass through you twice before you replied so your tone would carry truth without breaking people. You moved so feelings would keep moving and never install themselves as tyrants. You slept to keep your edge sharp enough to cut rope and dull enough not to cut flesh. You ate in ways that did not borrow tomorrow's gentleness for tonight's indulgence. These are chores, not slogans, and because they are chores, they are available under pressure when slogans evaporate. Under discipline, courage changes shape. The brave thing is no longer escalation, it is proportion. The sharp thing is no longer a quip, it is a line drawn in ink that will not smudge. When the moment calls for no, you say it like a good fence, visible in daylight, with a gate and a sign, no moat disguised as wisdom. When the moment calls for yes, it arrives paid in advance so no one owes you their soul to settle the bill. People leave your limits uninjured because your limits were designed to protect the house, not to win an argument about the door. Desire also learns to repair. When you miss, and you do, because you are human, you mend while the bruise is pale. You do not stage a theater of remorse to harvest sympathy. You do not outsource responsibility to the weather of the day. You say exactly what happened, what it cost, and what you will do to make it right. And then you do it. This is not penance, it is maintenance. Rooms with this habit stop bleeding time into resentment. Love with this habit stops spending courage on cleanup. The culture thickens into reliability, and reliability is what the heart means when it whispers safe. Your humor becomes part of the discipline rather than a leak. It ventilates the hour without puncturing anyone's dignity. It finds the knot and loosens it just enough to restore breath. Laughter paid for with a human face is too expensive in your economy. You keep the price of relief low by keeping the cost to people at zero. Softness thrives in that air. Strength does its best work there. Even children in the room feel it and become less frantic for attention because attention is no longer a scarce resource that must be stolen. Desire with discipline protects mornings. You leave nights while tenderness still has breath. You refuse the counterfeit richness of one more story, one more hour, one more victory lap that invoices the soul at dawn. You close the door softly, as if the house had nerves, and you bless what happened with one honest sentence instead of inflating it into a myth that will be heavy to carry later. People wake with their integrity unwrinkled. Decisions at breakfast do not need emergency speeches at noon. None of this will ever trend. All of it will endure. There will be invitations to trade stewardship for spectacle, to scale what is sacred until it becomes a brand, to turn your standard into a slogan and sell shortcuts to men who want results without rituals. Smile and decline. Keep the room small enough to love and large enough to matter. Share tools rather than angles. If pressed for a secret, give the only one worth giving. Water before opinion, breath before reply, movement before mood, sleep before rescue, truth at a human volume, repair while the bruise is pale, boundaries as architecture, endings on time, desire a guest in the house of your values. It will sound too ordinary to those who prefer fireworks to fire. Let them prefer. You keep the hearth. You will recognize that desire has been well governed by what remains when you are gone. Voices keep their human volume. Boundaries stay beautiful without your supervision. Credit continues to travel to the right hands while there's still music. A no does not require a footnote to be honored. A yes arrives paid. The door closes softly. Someone sets a cup down as if the table could feel. No one thinks to connect these mercies to you, and that is right. Discipline worthy of trust makes goodness repeatable without the man who modeled it. Chosen one, that is your mastery now. A warmth that invites, a gravity that steadies, a desire that serves the very life it longs for. Chosen one, protection is not what your hands do at the last second. It is what your presence does from the first breath. Before any door is locked, before any plan is drawn, before any boundary is spoken aloud, the room reads your weather and decides how brave it is allowed to be. This month, your weather is shelter. The small animals in every nervous system stop scanning the brush and begin to graze. Voices that were circling for safety land softly and tell the truth without asking permission. Even objects seem to remember their manners. The glass sits without complaint. The door closes as if the house had nerves. The chair returns to its place because you do not practice violence, even in small mechanics. People think protection is muscle. Your body has taught them that it is also a manner. You protect first with attention. You do not rent it to panic or sell it to spectacle. You spend it where care becomes contagious. You look at a person the way you set a cup down, deliberately, gently, as if they might remember the touch later and act accordingly. That look returns what it sees instead of requisitioning it. It neither hunts nor hides, it hosts. Under that gaze, boundaries become beautiful architecture rather than barricades. A no keeps its elegance. A yes arrives without debt. A not yet is allowed to be timing rather than a riddle you're trying to solve. The body hears this grammar before the mind finds words. The feminine relaxes her audit of exits and brings her full weather. The masculine stops broadcasting and starts carrying. Suddenly, the room is a place, not a stage. Your sexual energy, governed and warm, is the heart that makes this possible. Untended heat devours, tended flame invites. You do not turn desire into pressure or admiration into attacks. What you offer is proximity without conscription. People feel it in the way you pace a conversation, the way you allow one heartbeat between their last word and your first, the way you let silence work as a craftsman rather than using it as a weapon. In that extra breath, anger trades volume for a few facts, confession chooses honesty over theater, humor remembers its vocation is relief rather than dominance. You rescue the hour not by seizing it, but by setting its temperature to human. Protection has a geometry. You widen the table when conflict tries to shrink the world to two enemies and a crowd. You remove the audience from the quarrel so dignity can find a chair. You lay the problem flat where hands can touch it and speak in sentences the size of the break. This happened. This stops. This will be repaired. This remains good. Fury deprived of its parade changes into information. Information, placed to purpose, becomes solvable. You neither humiliate nor retreat. You do the unglamorous work of making repair obvious and therefore possible. Later, when the room is calm, people will half remember that the turning point was simple and quiet. They will be right. Your humor defends too. It never purchases lightness with a human face. It aims at the knot in the moment and loosens it without tearing the rope. Laughter under your care returns breath to tired lungs, not status to the loudest mouth. The shy voice attempts a second sentence. The clever voice tries a true one. The child in the corner, measuring whether attention is safe to touch, finds that it is. You did not entertain them into relief. You allowed relief to become the room's natural state. That is protection as climate rather than event. You have become difficult to manipulate because your protection begins before you are praised and continues after you are ignored. Flattery cannot bribe a man who measures results by mornings that do not need to heal from the night. Provocation cannot conscript a man who refuses to spend attention at drama's prices. You leave while tenderness still has breath. You close the door like the house could feel. You send the one honest sentence that preserves memory without inflating myth. People wake without refunds to issue to their conscience. Their kindness survives into noon. No one attributes this economy to you out loud. They do not have to. The proof of protection is what remains uninjured. There are hours that require the line in ink that will not smudge. You draw it without theater. You say, that ends here, and it does. Not because you grew loud, but because you have been consistent long enough that your quiet has weight. Even those you oppose recognize that you left them a path back. This is the difference between the strong and the merely forceful. Force wins a moment. Strength preserves a future. You choose the future. You will not salt the earth to harvest applause. Your rituals keep this atmosphere alive. You give your patients something physical to burn by drinking water before you opine. You keep your tone human by letting breath pass twice before reply. You deny emotion the chance to become a tyrant by moving your body daily. You keep your edge from turning into a blade by sleeping enough to respect tomorrow. You keep appetite in its right chair by praying in plain language, reminding it that it is a guest, not a king. You name the hidden hands while there is still music, so justice remains fed. You repair while the bruise is pale, so resentment goes hungry. None of this trends. All of it lasts. In your orbit, the metrics of safety change. People do not become smaller to be safe, they become more themselves. Women are not asked to trade radiance for protection. Men are not asked to trade tenderness for worth. Children are not taught that attention is earned by injury. You do not enforce this with announcements, you host it with habits. The room learns and, in time, remembers. Weeks after you are gone, a door closes softly. A joke refuses to invoice a face. A no is treated as beautiful architecture. A yes arrives paid. No one calls your name as the reason. They do not need to. The work is done when protection becomes custom. Chosen one, command that needs a drumline is campaigning, not leadership. Yours has retired from performance and chosen proportion. You are no less decisive. You are simply more exact. The room senses it immediately. The crowded hurry of other people's anxiety stops trying to live inside your lungs. Meetings that wanted to be courtrooms remember they were called to be workshops. People who came to win discover they would rather complete. This is not charisma bending will. It is coherence bending noise. Quiet command begins with kept promises at unremarkable hours. You arrive when you said, because you honored all the small minutes that conspired to bring you here. You end while kindness still has breath, because you will not fund a moment with debt from tomorrow. Between those bookends you let truth travel at a walk. The beat you leave between another's last word and your first is not a tactic. It is trust. Trust that the wiser sentence is on its way. Trust that anger can choose information over eruption. Trust that wonder can finish forming without being dragged out by impatience. Under that cadence, the room grows intelligent. Accuracy becomes affordable. Courage stops needing adrenaline to feel real. Your sexual energy is the current under this command, and its governance is why people trust you without being told to. Heat is visible, human, unapologetic, and obedient to purpose. You do not audition with desire. You arrange with it. Consent is the language, timing is the tempo, dignity is the law. The feminine recognizes that her no will be blessed, her yes will arrive paid, and her not yet will not be cross-examined. The masculine recognizes that spectacle cannot buy your attention, so substance must. In such a climate, performance runs out of oxygen. Work, blessedly, does not. The sentences you choose are tools, not trophies. You name what happened instead of rehearsing how it made you look. You decide at a volume humans can live with tomorrow. You keep mercy at the table so repair remains an option larger than punishment. When correction is required, you address behavior without redesigning identity. When praise is due, you deliver it while there is still music. Credit travels to hidden hands before resentment grows teeth. Blame, when it must, is taken up with responsibility rather than outsourced to the weather. This economy teaches a culture to prefer fairness over flash. The loud become precise. The invisible become dependable without debt. Your command edits space with small, relentless courtesies. You angle your stance so crowded paths widen. You pass a plate as if ceramic has a memory. You set down a tool like it could tell the story later. Matter learns from you. People learn from matter. If objects deserve gentleness, so do disagreements. If doors can close softly, so can narratives. If chairs can return to place, so can tempers. The room becomes less theatrical and more usable. Usefulness is the kindest form of power. When conflict comes dressed as urgency, you lower the price of attention until drama cannot afford it. You close the theater and open the table. You keep the exits called winning and sulking unromantic. The 4-beat grammar returns. This happened. This stops. This is repaired. This remains good. The outcome is not an audience satisfied by blood. It is a team relieved by clarity. They will not sing about it.